I'm so glad you're here with us on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to empower you with advice and information that allows you to make better financial decisions in your life. And it's Friday, the time of the week where I got to learn where I could have served you better. I could have given you better information, or something you feel that I was just plain dumb about in our Clark Stink segment. And later, gosh, utility bills going up, 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 and away in states that have monopoly power companies. But do you know right now you can dial back the cost of the energy you use in your house and get paid to do it? I'm going to tell you what's going on that can benefit you. But without further ado, it is time for Clark Stinks.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
So, Christa, those of you who watch the YouTube show, you get to see that Christa does the Clark Stinks dance.
Well, it's not really
Each
a dance.
time
I just sort of shuffle around. Okay.
Yes.
A listener recently asked about car rentals and complained that it's difficult to pick the actual model of car for a rental. Clark, you said, I feel your pain, and noted that enterprise car rentals occasionally can get you exactly the car you want. Well, Clark, you should have mentioned Turo. That's the whole idea of Turo car rentals, to be able to rent exactly the model you want. It's similar to Airbnb. I admit it's a bit time-consuming to set up a user profile on the Turo app. And they go on. That one's from Tim, and lots of people wrote in with that suggestion. I meant to say that to you. I must have gotten distracted.
No, that is such a brain freeze from me that I did not mention that Turo was the perfect way, because I've mentioned that before when somebody wanted to test drive. I forget what it was, and they said, you know, I wanted to get it from a rental car company, and I mentioned Turo, and then I didn't this last time. So thank you all for mentioning that and giving me a chance to step up and say the right thing, which is Turo is how you can target in on the exact model and make that you want to test drive as a possible vehicle to buy.
I really don't think you stink. It just seems you forget to shower occasionally. Amazon Music with Prime works okay, but the constant requests to join Music Unlimited for $9.99 a month. We can start your free trial now. Would you like to start your free trial? Drive us bonkers. It can be difficult to impossible to play what you want, and I often get error messages if using the app on my phone. We still love Amazon, though. Bill in Colorado, and a couple other people actually wrote with the same sentiment.
That Amazon is being too aggressive.
With it, yeah.
So I use Pandora, which my son says makes me older than dirt, that I use Pandora to listen to music. And I use the free Pandora service, and they know my music taste at this point so well that I would say 98% of the songs they play for me are exactly what I'd want to listen to, and it is free. Do they not try like once a day to get me to sign up for some kind of Pandora Plusy kind of thing or something, whatever they call it? Yes. But it's not a constant nag.
You don't stink, but one of my neighbors listened to you and bought a 25-kilowatt Generac and placed it 18 feet from my master bedroom. Please ask listeners to be neighborly regarding where they install the generator. For example, my neighbor could have installed the generator near his garage versus next to my master bedroom. For now, I have to decide what to do. He's not responding to requests to move the generator. So should I put up a solid block wall to reflect the noise away from my bedroom? Will his generator location impact the value and resale of my home? Mike.
Mike, the generator will not affect the resale value of your home, but it's so weird what you're writing about, because the power companies are having a lot more trouble with outages because of the what's hopefully a temporary significant increase in severe storms. There are much greater number of power outages, and so every time there is one, more people put in a generator. And it was interesting because what the article was talking about is exactly what you're complaining about, is the noise pollution from the generators. They are loud, especially whole house ones, and that you're supposed to be a good neighbor, and you're supposed to go to your neighbor and say, is there anything we can charge for you? Do you have stuff in your refrigerator, freezer that we can save for you till you have power again at your home? I mean, it is so important to be a good neighbor, and obviously your neighbor is not being considerate and polite. As far as moving a generator once it's installed, that is a huge undertaking and would be really, really expensive. So as far as noise abatement, I don't know exactly what you could use. I used to live in a neighborhood that was subject to extreme power outages that could last a week or more. And when we had a power outage, the noise in the neighborhood, because one by one, it seemed like at least 3/4 of the houses installed generators. The noise was crazy loud. I know what you're talking about.
Also, someone else did complain that you say that's a temporary, hopefully, increase in major storms, that you're ignoring climate change.
So climate change is obviously a real thing. There's no doubt that we are going through climate change. You look at the increased temperatures of seawater and all that has increased the intensity of storms. It is a real thing. We don't do a political show, and it's unfortunate, but the reality of climate change has become a political hot button. So I don't generally use the phrase. I just acknowledge that we have a big increase in the intensity and frequency of storms.
Clark, you stink like gas station sushi. While I share your passion for Buc-ee's and Wawa and Sheetz and the other roadside gas station convenience stores, you should probably mention that the food and merchandise in these establishments are way overpriced. While there are usually a few come on specials to get you in the door, overall the prices are outrageous, especially on chips, cookies, and other snacks. My very frugal Depression-era parents would never set foot in these stores, and they would always point out how much money I was wasting by not going to the supermarket for these items. We always packed a lunch or brought snacks from home when we traveled together as a family. Hope to see you at Buc-ee's someday, Charlie.
So, Charlie, when I go on a trip where I'm driving a long drive without my wife, and I realize I'm hungry and I'm not anywhere convenient, I stop. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Christa. I stop at Dollar General, and I get whatever snacks or whatever I need or drinks there because they're so much cheaper than they are at a convenience store. And the Dollar General locations, what are there, 27,000 of them or something? Far more than any of the chains that you just mentioned. And that is a way on a road trip to save money if you don't have already packed sandwiches and drinks in a cooler and all that.
You certainly don't stink, but you recently skipped over a story on the podcast and it left a pungent odor in the air. In Clark Stinks, you referred to a story of almost losing your Costco membership, but skipped over the story because you had mentioned it some other time. I've been listening for over a year and have never heard this story. I always love to hear your stories, Clark, even if they're repeats. Thanks for all you do and for all your incredible wisdom, Jacob.
Okay, Jacob, I'll give the really quick version of what happened. I was doing self-checkout at Costco, and one of the helpful employees who was working the self-checkout area came up because I had a buggy full or basket full of stuff, and came over with the gun and rang up the items, and she missed 2 items. And so when I got to the door and they counted up items, there were 2 items that I hadn't paid for. I had to go back, and then I got written up, and there was like a hot sheet where they took my membership number and wrote it down and all that. And the employee, seeing that, came over and said, "Don't write him up. It was my fault. I scanned the basket, not him, not the member." And so fortunately, they didn't take my membership away, but apparently you got written up on this. I'm in their system now as somebody who tried to abscond with 2 items. And I guess at some point they pull your membership if that repeats. So I'm really, really careful at Costco self-checkout now that every item rang up and that every item is on my receipt way before I get to the door.
You love arithmetic when it's about money, but you throw it out the window when it's about electricity. Recharging the backup when an outage from solar panels? Are you kidding me? I could claim recharging when I attach a AAA battery to it too. People who don't understand these kind of energy things believe you have done the math and it works when you say it, but you haven't. Want to convert into being a bank flunky too? Bank fees are good for you to save the planet. Zell is energy efficient and will save the planet so nothing else matters. I'm an electrical engineer and this idiocy makes me think the human race is doomed. Tell the whole story, Clark. Battery backup is limited like crazy. Solar panels have to be large to generate any reasonable amount of electricity to restore backup energy needs. You can't hook up a 2-foot by 8-foot solar panel and get much of anything. Be honest at least, or solar-powered Zell needs to be looked at again, Wade.
Wade, thank you. Okay, this is so weird. But in a meeting, was that yesterday or 2 days ago, we were talking about exactly this with battery backup and how much it can do, how long it lasts. And your point is completely valid. And we were talking about where people get the big batteries in their garage, what I think Tesla calls battery walls, and there are a number of manufacturers that make these battery panels, and you have to install enough of them to make it work. Now, to your point about solar not being able to produce enough, and you're still generating battery wall power from electricity from the power company. Yes, but the point of it, the point of having that backup is that you have outage protection like you would with a generator. So depending on the size of your house and how long the typical power outage is that you've experienced in the past, that then determines how many of these batteries you need. And then it starts getting significantly expensive. But the long-term benefit of those is a lot of power companies provide very low power rates midnight to 5 a.m. And you can set the system so that it only restores power to those battery walls during those hours, so you get really cheap standby power. I hope that, and if my engineering still flunks and I'm still Zell power guy, what is it called?
Yeah.
Zell power guy? Solar powered Zell? Oh man. I mean, stick that knife in farther and twist it more, calling me solar-powered Zell.
Someone inquired as to what the best charity to donate a car to would be. You proceeded to tell them to sell the car themselves and donate the money to the charity of your choice. I would suspect the primary reason for donating a car rather than money would be that they didn't want to go through the hassle of selling the car themselves. She was probably hoping your group would have vetted some of the more common places advertising car donations. One annoying commercial comes to mind. Keep up the good work, John.
John, thank you. All right, so in that, I hope I explained the reason I like for people to sell their car and then take the money and donate. The charitable deduction you get, the IRS rules have become so much tougher. You're basically not getting a meaningful charitable deduction if you donate an old car. But if you sell it, you'll get quite a bit more money that you can then donate to a charity, and you have the money you got and you get a deduction for donating the money to a charity. It's a much more financially efficient way to do it. Now, as to your statement, they want it to be as easy as possible. That's why I have on Clark.com the guide of easy ways to sell a vehicle when you're not buying another and not having a lot of hassle with it. There are a number of outlets now you can do that, selling a car. The charity angle, I don't have, with how many different organizations take vehicle donations, I don't have a way of vetting who's legit, who's good, who's not.
Clark, you stunk it up on your show by not mentioning Zip Air as a cheap way to get to Japan. There are direct flights from San Jose to Tokyo, often for less than $700 round trip.
Wow.
This lets people fly inexpensively either into San Francisco, SJC or OAK, San Jose or Oakland, and then save a fortune.
They now call the San Francisco Bay Area Oakland Airport or something like that. That's the new name of Oakland.
And that's from Logan.
So, Logan, thank you. I'm not familiar with Zip Air. I'll look them up. I'll learn about them because I love all these smaller airlines offering these really cheap fares from the U.S. to Asia.
You stink. You mentioned Costco as the best pet prescription prices, but Sam's could be much better. My dogs take a prescription. It's $72 a month at Costco, but only $48 each with Sam's Plus. Andrew.
Andrew, thank you. And let me emphasize again, with the thing I talked about recently about the deterioration in the value of the Sam's Club Plus membership with no longer having the basically no holds barred, unlimited free delivery, if you take a number of prescription drugs and you bring up pets, that Sam's Club offers great prescription drug prices to Plus members. It is a much superior offering than regular Sam's Club members get. If you are regularly a Sam's Club member and you take any of a number of prescription drugs, or your pets do too, you want to pay the extra money to be a Plus member because of how much money you'll save on prescription drugs. It's very interesting, though, because I'm a member of both, and I need to check to see if using my Sam's Plus membership, my Club Plus membership, would save me more money than the prescriptions that I fill at Costco. And by the way, for those of you who aren't aware, who have a pet, you will save so much money getting your pet meds from Costco or Sam's Club. They are so much cheaper from them than virtually any other way you could fill a pet med. And I want to thank everyone who takes time to write a Clark Stinks, and I appreciate it so much because you show when I was thick in the head, I forgot something, whatever, and I really appreciate your perspectives and the time it took for you to share your perspective. Again, at clark.com/ClarkStinks. Coming up ahead, the power bills we're getting now really stink. And I want to tell you a way to dial back the cost of your utility bills straight ahead. We have a real split in the United States with what's going on with power bills across the country. In states where we have competitive power available and you don't have a cozy monopoly, corrupt political process with a monopoly power company providing power, utility rates have generally been trending down. Cost per kilowatt hour generally down in competitive markets. Unfortunately, most states in the United States still rely on the politically corrupt system that was actually necessary in a different era before you'd even use the word technology, going back to early in the electrification of the United States, where it made sense to have monopoly power companies. Today, it's just a really dirty process that costs you and I, business owners, consumers, manufacturing facilities, crazy amounts extra to deal with what I call the monopoly surcharge. And so power bills are marching like straight upward in states that don't have competition for the supplying of power. And so you and I can't do anything about that corrupt political process that has these power monopolies. What we can do something about, because the politicians are all bought and paid for by the monopoly power companies. Anyway, gosh, that was so cynical. It's actually a fact that I hate exists. I'm such a believer in the free market. But there is something you can do, and that is don't be a sitting duck. Most of us have houses that are extremely energy inefficient. And it's because historically in the United States, power costs were very, very low compared to what they were in most of the rest of the world. But now this political corrupt process has pushed our rates way up there and now higher than much of the rest of the world. And so now it really matters to have energy efficiency. And for the next, I guess it's 8 or 10 years, it's a long time, at least for now, unless future Congress changes it, you have the ability to earn tax credits for a long list of energy-saving improvements in your home. Some of them, depending on which item you do, almost a third of the cost of whatever improvement you do is basically given back to you. And then the payback for some of these things is so fast. The lowest hanging fruit is amazing. You put in proper insulation in your home, and you're going to be more comfortable in your home winter and summer, and your utility bills will be much, much lower. Because, truth be told, overwhelmingly, homes in the United States are inadequately insulated. And this is a way for you to get fast payback. I've talked a long time about installing the smart thermostats that can reduce your power bill if you let the smart thermostat do its thing by about 20%. It's not going to make any difference about the electric lighting. But if you haven't switched over to LED lighting in your home, again, you're throwing more money away. And in the summer, you're really throwing money away because traditional bulbs give off so much heat that they put more demand on air conditioning. And there are any of a number of things that are eligible for credits, but let's even forget the credits for a second. What about putting in ceiling fans? Ceiling fans reduce how much heating and cooling you need in your home. And ceiling fans were such a big deal back in the 70s and 80s. People really aren't into them now, but they're a great energy-saving device. And I could go on and on here, but the thing is, when there are things, that serenity prayer thing where you got to know the wisdom, knowing what you can change and what you can't, however that goes. Christa, how does that go? I always forget.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Wow, that's pretty articulate. How'd you know all that?
I just know it.
Anyway, so the point is, we can't overcome the corrupt political process that exists in so many states. But what we can control is how much of those overpriced kilowatts we're using. And that's where I want you to make a change in your life to reduce these costs and know that many of the things you do will have the payback of the tax credit that will defray a meaningful amount of that expense.
Okay, so got a couple of questions about windows. One person said that they had signed a Windows contract and had them replaced for $25,000. The salesperson said they would qualify for the energy credit, but they did not.
Right.
And then this one came in from Chris in Virginia. Thanks for the valuable advice you provide on a daily basis. Need your advice on window and exterior sliding door replacement. I'm looking to have 18 windows and 2 sliding doors replaced, and I got 4 quotes. All the quotes I've gotten are over $22,000. When did windows get this expensive? I feel the pricing is very high. Any tips from you on how to get this number down?
Okay, so both of these are important. Why is it you don't get a federal credit on window replacement? Because in terms of reducing energy consumption in a dwelling, they make virtually zero impact. So that's why Congress, in its wisdom, did not provide a credit for those. Second, the real question for you, Chris, about replacing the windows and the sliders in your house is, what's the reason? Have the windows deteriorated to the point that they are not really properly working anymore? They've rotted out or something like that? That would be a reason to replace windows. You don't do it because you think it's going to make your home meaningfully more energy efficient. So windows being expensive, my goodness, they are a very expensive product. And the reason they are so expensive is because of lack of standardization in the window sizes and types that are put into homes or multifamily. So windows don't benefit except for certain sizes from economies of scale. And so windows are a crazy expensive thing because of how much customization is generally involved.
So there is a federal credit, but it's pretty small. Doors are limited to $250 per door, $500 total. Windows, $600.
Total. Yeah, so I mean, that's virtually meaningless as a credit. And I'm really sorry, particularly to the individual who was lied to and bought the windows. We had something else recently about it with somebody who was lied to about solar panels and that the solar panel use would be free, which was obviously not true.
Kevin in Georgia says HVAC companies offer customers the opportunity to sign up for a maintenance contract on their equipment. This is often offered as gold, silver, or bronze programs or other means of description. My question is, are these service agreements necessary or are they worth it? And I know you mentioned this in a recent answer, but I thought we'd bring it up again here.
So the marketing thing of gold, silver, or bronze, that's not a question I've had before. I don't know what you're supposedly getting that would be of greater value going into these higher tiers. It is really worthwhile and useful to have the seasonal service visits twice a year. And all you're doing is prepaying essentially for that. The advantage is that you're on the schedule and get it done. So often if people don't have a service contract for the twice a year visits, they just don't get around to it. And the filters don't get changed. And the system, they may be able to prevent what would become a major problem from becoming one. You miss that. What you don't know in this case could hurt you. Now, having said that, as I've read a lot about, a lot of heating and air conditioning companies are being bought up by private equity in what are known as roll-ups. The old name of the family is still on the business, but private equity comes in, buys them out, and then they put the technicians on commissions, and they're put under high pressure to sell a lot of stuff you don't need. If you have a seasonal visit and the person say, oh man, I mean, I would really replace this and that and the other, that's when, even though you paid for that seasonal service, it would be a good idea to have another company come in and check out your system. And unfortunately, because of private equity, you may find that you're being told you have a problem that does not exist, because they're not worried about killing loyalty for a company they buy. Private equity comes in, burns the building down, and then they leave pretty much. And so you just got to know that private equity has brought a new level of uncertainty into having heating and air conditioning repair and service.
Ann in Connecticut says, I wanted to share two surprisingly positive stories from my recent trip in Colorado. My Airbnb reservation, booked 3 months before the trip, was canceled by the host less than 2 weeks before my trip. Airbnb customer service reached out to me and offered to help me find a new place within my criteria and cover the additional cost.
They did what?
The only things left at the time were more expensive. At the end, I got a place that is double the cost, and their customer service gave me the coupon code to use during my booking, bringing the price down to even less than my original booking.
Do you hear what you're reading? How fantastic that is?
I was very impressed by their prompt support and professionalism. On the same trip, I booked a car rental with Enterprise in downtown Denver to save money. 8 days in an economy car equals $700 at the airport versus a low $400 at this location. When picking up my car, I had to wait for about 2 hours since there were no cars. A customer got nasty to staff at the counter after they were so apologetic. I was very patient to the staff, and they ended up giving me a brand new car with the discount price of $286.
What do we talk about? Honey over vinegar, right?
Yes, and somebody else wrote in a story that their flight changed and they were getting in like 8 hours earlier, but to change the rental car would have been like an extra $400. It was like crazy. So they went on Turo, got a Turo car for that period of time, checked in their hotel, brought it back to the airport, turned it in, and then got their rental car.
I had a flight change from an airline that was 2 hours. It was coming in, leaving 2 hours earlier, getting there 2 hours earlier. So I went to the rental car thing to change my arrival time, and they were going to treat it as a brand new booking, and the price was going through the roof. And so what I did was I just left it as it was and showed up when I got there with the plane arriving early. Nobody said or did anything, and I went off in the car, and everything was fine. But changing the arrival time now seems to trigger a true penalty. And what a very clever thing that our car rental folks are doing, because the car rental industry is a little more complicated to deal with than it used to be. And I love both of those stories. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to say something about the Airbnb. I'm so impressed with that. And if you like using Airbnb, Airbnb just reported really bad numbers saying that bookings are down and that their projections are that bookings are going to be softer. So it means that if you booked an Airbnb for way off in the future, and it is one with flexible cancellations, what do they call it? What do they call on Airbnb? You book a lot of Airbnbs where you can.
Well, it tells you what the cancellation policy is for each
So
one.
if it's one that's free cancel, you should reshop your stay, just like I talk about reshopping cars and hotels and flights and all that. And if you booked an airplane flight, all the airlines are complaining that bookings are much softer and they're expecting a bad fall and winter. And if you booked a ticket a good long while ago, you should check to see if the price of the airline ticket has dropped. And so all the travel elements have been at extremely high prices. As you know, if you bought air travel, hotels, Airbnbs, rental cars, and now that travel is shifting out of that pent-up demand phase that went on for much longer than anybody expected from COVID, and the economy has slowed down a little bit into a little bit lower gear, as I've talked about in the Clarkonomics segment we did recently. It means that travel elements that you booked far in advance may all be cheaper than they were. And I just found this with a flight that I just reduced the price 40% by rebooking with the same airline, same market, and the price was 40% lower than it had been. So take the time to check, because it's your money. And have a great, great weekend, as I said earlier, but I got distracted like I do and talked about something else. And we will be with you on Monday. But remember this, what we're about, you saving more, spending less, and avoid getting ripped off.